be here. I want to thank my hosts from WNS for having me here. I've had the opportunity to get to know them over the last many months as we've been delivering some training programs to their leadership team. And I just find them to be incredibly earnest, and they operate with a very high degree of integrity. And so it's just a pleasure to have a chance to be here with you today. So, of course, the topic du jour is generative AI. Okay? And what I hope to do with all of you over the next 45 minutes is to give you a very high-level overview, but with a really clear sense that there is tremendous impact that is already being realized in organizations around the world. This is not the next shiny new thing. This is for real, okay? And so really quickly, so I can set some context, started off as an engineer in Silicon Valley, went back, got an MBA at Yale, went and worked at McKinsey out of their headquarters in New York City, and then co-founded 8 enterprise technology companies, 2 of which went public on the NASDAQ, 7 of 8 which were acquired by people like IBM and Oracle and AT&T. But I've been living a dual life. For the last 22 years, I've also been a professor. And I've been teaching at MIT. I teach 6 courses a year at Harvard. I'm on the faculty at Carnegie Mellon, which is the program that I've had the privilege of engaging with WNS. I've taught exec ed courses at Oxford and others. Okay? And I've worked with some very large global brands over the years around innovation and most recently, of course, generative AI. So this is something I'm very passionate about. Okay? And I don't believe in keeping the summary until the end. I want to tell you right now, and then I will unpack for you over the next 45 minutes some of these claims, right? Whether you believe it or not, whether you want to believe it or not, the cognitive revolution is here today. Some of you are living in the future. Some of you may be hoping to live in the future, but it is here, and it is now, okay? There are a number of high-impact use cases that are already delivering significant results, right? McKinsey identifies 4 universal use cases, and I'm going to unpack each one of those with some examples, some success stories of companies that are engaged in these use cases today and the benefits that they're realizing, okay? Just this morning, I don't know how many of you heard, Meta has announced that they are going to be integrating chatbots into WhatsApp. Okay? And of course, their distribution power in India, Brazil, around the world, all of these businesses using WhatsApp will now have a chatbot to work on their behalf to engage in customer support. Let's hope that they've done their homework, and let's hope that what they release is actually functional. But every morning when I wake up, there's at least one new meaningful announcement. And it's quite like drinking from the proverbial fire hose to keep up with it. So I hope that you have people on your team that you have tasked with keeping up with this astonishing pace of innovation that is being announced on a regular basis. New corporate governance structures, by definition, are forming. So if you talk to governance experts, we're seeing a new committee on the board of directors. Yes, we've always had the audit committee. We've always had the risk committee. And now we're seeing a new technology committee that is being formed at the board of director level. We're seeing new technology councils that are being brought in. And we're seeing a remarkable new title that is starting to really dramatically get some traction, which is the Chief AI Officer. I'm on the board of the MIT CIO Symposium, and for many years, one would have expected either the CIO or the CTO to be the person under which next generation innovation will occur. But today, things are being consolidated under the new role of Chief AI Officer. So this revolution is driving a lot of impact within organizations as well. Okay? And so, of course, as we just heard from Kashav, every organization needs to have a strategic plan for upskilling their employees and also creating a governance structure that works for them given the industry that they're in, the sense of maturity that the business has. And competition is happening, of course, at a company level, but it is also occurring at a country or a regional level, and that's not to be dismissed. Okay? So welcome to the revolution, everyone. Okay? And again, the future is already here. And it's always been here. So here in London, the first industrial revolution dating back to the 1780s, And we have seen one cycle after another, one wave after another. And the companies that are able to bridge from one wave to the next, they embrace the future ahead of the mainstream. And so today, the way that companies will remain relevant is that we will be the first to move into this cognitive era. Okay? And so my hope is that I instill a sense of urgency in those of you in the room who may be struggling to figure out how to drive this change. Okay? 20 years ago, Thomas Friedman wrote a groundbreaking book called The World is Flat. And of course, he was talking about globalization at the time. But the world is not flat when it comes to artificial intelligence. And so what we see here is a recently released study from the Fletcher School of Economics at Tufts University in Massachusetts. And what the authors went on to do is they ranked the top 25 countries by their readiness for AI adoption. And as we will see, the United States ranks #1, and it's driven by these 4 different levers. Capacity for innovation, including advances in AI models, creative ability to source data, new applications, which we're seeing just an explosion, a Cambrian explosion of. Is there access to significant capital, because training these large language models is incredibly expensive? You know, is there some level of governance in place? And finally, is there a volume of data? And so as we look, China is clearly, you know, #2, but significantly behind the US. The United Kingdom is a solid 3rd place. Okay, and so this kind of lays the groundwork for, at the country level, how ready is each set of companies in that country to be able to leverage the infrastructure within the respective country, okay? And again, deal flow is also not flat. So we're seeing a massive amount of investment happening in the US. About half of that rate is happening in Europe, and then relatively significant amount in Asia. But as we move into the global south, we're seeing literally single-digit deals and extremely low levels of investment, okay? Now, one of the things you might have noted from that chart is the UAE and Saudi Arabia are not on that chart. And I'm going to talk about that in a second as to why, because let's be clear, they are very serious players in this AI game, okay? Now here in the backyard of London, we have what was originally known as DeepMind. The lab was formed in 2010. It was acquired by Google in 2014, and it was then integrated along with Google Brain into what is now called Google DeepMind. And they have had an incredible history of breakthroughs, and maybe one of them is the ability of their algorithm to beat the world's Go champion. So there's no question that they've had a remarkable impact on the science. But what we've seen recently from Google is some pretty challenging outcomes over their last 3 public announcements as they brought together DeepMind's researchers with their engineering team. And I'm sure I don't have to recount for you some of the embarrassments that we've seen recently, okay? Now, Microsoft has recently made an investment in what is really the only true European unicorn to come out of this new cognitive revolution. And that is the French open source large language model company called Mistral. Okay? And Mistral is really one of the very few European companies getting any level of real significant media attention in the United States. Now, what's interesting about Mistral is they're taking an open source approach. And all the way from Emmanuel Macron on, you know, they're being championed as sort of the next new thing. But I want to point out something. If you look at the amount of money that they've only raised about $550 million thus far. OpenAI has raised $13 billion. Anthropic has raised about $7 billion. Just this morning, Cohere announced it was raising another $500 million in its newest round. So you have a lot of very significant companies. So, you know, obviously, these are names we all recognize. You may not recognize the venture capital firms, but they're all prominent top-tier VC funds. But they've only raised $500 million so far, right? And of course, to train these models requires a massive amount of capital. So that's one challenge. But the other challenge is, will the EU actually allow them to succeed? If you're going to be a startup in the AI space, you need distribution. And what Mistral has done is they've entered into a relationship with Microsoft, taking full advantage of that massive distribution channel that Microsoft has, which is going to be critical to their success. This is why OpenAI partnered with Microsoft so early on. They needed distribution. But the EU is already starting to challenge this relationship, which would be a very significant setback for Mistral if the EU prevails. Okay? So just a few weeks ago, we had our annual MIT CIO Symposium. And the theme this year was the Goldilocks paradox. And navigating extremes in your digital strategy. And of course, every company has to decide for itself what is the right level of resilience and stability versus the right level of innovation, based on the goals and purpose of the company. But every country, every region also has to decide what is the right level of regulation and the right level of innovation. And how do we balance out those two typically opposing forces? Okay? Europe has typically led with regulation over innovation, and obviously that creates a lot of challenges, and that's why there's been a dearth of European unicorns that have come out in over multiple technology cycles. Saudi Arabia does not have that challenge. They have made an announcement they're going to invest $40 billion in AI startups. And in the UAE, they put together a $100 billion fund to fund innovation. So make no mistake, we are going to see some remarkable technology coming out of the UAE and Saudi Arabia in the coming years. They're totally committed to it. And I assure you that regulation will not get in the way of innovation for them. Okay? Just the way that the world is going to work. So we have lived through 75 years of AI runway. And how appropriate that we're here in London, and the great mathematician and cryptographer and preeminent computer scientist Alan Turing actually coined the Turing test in 1950. And we have seen some remarkable advances and some equally remarkable setbacks and long periods of AI winter over that 75-year period. Okay? And so I can tell you that I can go back 30 years as an engineer, and we were building what we thought were AI solutions. How naive were we with the lack of compute and the lack of data? So there's been a lot of false promises that have created a lot of unrealized ambitions. And most of you in the room must know Amara's Law, right? We overestimate the impact of technology in the short term, and we underestimate it in the long term. Well, boy, have we overestimated the impact of AI up until a couple of years ago. But I think most of us today are underestimating its long-term impact today, okay? So that brings us to where we are now, starting in November of 2023, the beginning of this new era. And in order to drive a new technology for pervasive adoption, you need a killer app. Think about the personal computer. The president of IBM, the president of Digital Equipment Corporation, and many others were very dismissive. Why would you possibly need a personal computer at work? And then the Lotus 123 spreadsheet was born, and you had your answer, okay? And that has persisted for decades. Well, we have a killer app, and it's known as ChatGPT, okay? And what I find remarkable about this new chatbot is how multi-purpose it is in its ability to solve problems. It is a Swiss Army knife on steroids. There are a limitless number of tools that can be brought to bear in order to be able to address problems we never imagined we could address in time frames that we thought were inconceivable just a few years ago. Okay? And so I think of it as a turbocharger for the mind. Okay? Now, is Gartner in the room today? Do we have anyone from Gartner here? I don't see anyone. Okay, anyway, I've been doing business with Gartner for many, many years, and I know one thing about Gartner. They are a very sober-minded group of analysts. They do not get seduced by sexy new technology, okay? It's not their business to do that. They need to be very disciplined in the way that they look at technology. And so if you look at their digital disruption scale, right, the number one in history, of course, was the internet, the World Wide Web, which they compare to World War II. Wow, that's pretty disruptive. And all of a sudden, and it took 30, 40 years for them to get to this point. But here we have Gartner now placing generative AI on the same chart. Generative AI that's been around 18 months and already placing it on the doorstep as revolutionary in 18 months, right? That might be an anecdote, but when I see Gartner giving generative AI that level of emphasis, to me personally, tells me everything that I need to know, okay? And so disruption then is coming for all of us. It always has, but it's going to be coming faster, more relentlessly. And so let's look at the company Chegg. I don't know how many of you know Chegg. They started off renting textbooks to students, and over time they got involved in a lot more services for students, including, kind of the modern digital version of Cliff Notes, okay? And they had their IPO in 2013, and they were going just fine. And then all of a sudden, November 23 happened. And very, very quickly, I saw with my own students that this ChatGPT thing was being used almost instantly, okay? Completely changing the way that assignments were being handed in. And their stock, Wall Street being very efficient, Wall Street took notice quickly. And then when they had their inevitable earnings call in March, the CEO was honest and says, yes, this is having an impact on the company. Look at the stock price. So the stock price when I took this screenshot was $5.27. As of last night, it was $3.67. This is allowing disruption to happen to you. Here's a different way to handle disruptive technology. How many of you know Khan Academy? Khan Academy was founded by the great Salman Khan. It has completely revolutionized the world of education, especially for students in sort of elementary, middle school, and even high school around math and sciences, okay? And he's won numerous well-deserved awards. Well, Sal Khan, he saw what was happening. He understood the implications of this technology, right, creating content. And so he makes his way over to OpenAI and says, hey, why don't we partner? Okay, not let me, let it happen, but let's make it happen together. And what he was able to do then is he was able to take OpenAI's foundational model and he was able to fine-tune it so that he could create a custom, purpose-built version of the next generation, which is an AI-enabled Khan Academy app called Conmigo, amigo, the Spanish name for friend. And he's able to go off and say that we're able to outperform ChatGPT in each of these critical categories, from personalized tutoring, better math accuracy, tracking progress over time, enhanced privacy, right? This is the difference between letting disruption happen or having agency and understanding where the world is going and beating the world to that, okay? And so I love this quote from the futurist Alvin Toffler. The illiterate of the 21st century are not those that cannot read and write, but those that cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. I can't begin to tell you how much I've had to unlearn about how to start a tech company or how I teach, given where I started 30 years ago. I've had to unlearn a lot of stuff to create space up here, to adopt new technologies and new methodologies, okay? And so what are those people that are seeing the future doing today? Let's start with the top down, because there's a lot of companies that have taken a bottoms-up approach to AI. But let's talk with the real visionary leaders and what they're doing today, okay? Obviously, McKinsey talks about generative AI as the single highest priority, period, for CEOs around the world in 2024, okay? So what are the CEOs seeing? Jamie Dimon, I'm sure that you all know this gentleman, head of the largest bank in the United States, often mentioned as the next Treasury Secretary, often mentioned as the next chair of the Federal Reserve, and another guy that is not easily seduced by technology. He's been an absolute bear on cryptocurrency from day one and was not willing to change his mind during some of the crypto booms. And yet he says that this is going to be as transformational as some of the major technological inventions of the last several hundred years, including electricity, computing, and the internet. Now, closer to home, we have the premier high-tech private equity firm known as Thoma Bravo. Thoma Bravo pioneered PE investing in technology. They've made 200 acquisitions. And when Gen AI came out, their global chief technology officer gathered the 200 chief technology officers of their 200 portfolio companies. And his message is, whatever your roadmap is, tear it up and start over again. In 30 days, I want to see your new Gen AI-influenced roadmap, okay? And of course, that's exactly what the CIOs and CTOs brought back to Steve. So these are people that are seeing the future quickly, and they're not waiting, okay? Does anybody recognize this video, or this snap? This comes from the OpenAI tool known as Sora. This is a text-to-video tool. And this is the reaction. Some of you may know the movie franchise that is Medea. This is Tyler Perry, who happens to be someone who is a director, a producer, and he actually owns one of the most sophisticated and technology-forward studios in the United States. Perry saw a 20-minute video demo of Sora. He picked up the phone. He called his key leaders and said, you know that $800 million investment we were about to make in our studio to take it into the next generation? Stop the presses. I have seen the future. And until we figure out what implications there are for the use of Sora, we should not be making an investment. Okay? That's the level of profundity of what is happening out there, if people are willing to pay attention and acknowledge the reality of where we are. Okay? And Moderna, the company that brought us the mRNA COVID vaccine, a very sophisticated company, right? They're doing drug research around vaccines. They entered into a relationship with OpenAI where every single employee is going to be getting access to, all of the OpenAI tools. And he expects to see it happen being used in legal research, manufacturing, commercial. And so this is just, again, a very progressive view of how we might adopt this technology. And then here in London, where PwC is headquartered, they recently made an announcement that they're distributing OpenAI to all 100,000 of their employees. And then one European example, which I think is really interesting, is the company known as Klarna. I don't know how many of you know or use Klarna. It is a buy now, pay later fintech app. And this is the kind of CEOs that I love to invest in and work with. Okay, so Sebastian, and by the way, they're on a track right now to raise money in an IPO at a $20 billion valuation, either on the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange. TBD which of those two exchanges they will choose. First European company and the first fintech company to globally launch a ChatGPT plugin. And I'm going to be talking about them several more times. But what I love is now here is their chief marketing officer, right? The weekend that ChatGPT was launched, the management team that very weekend went off and they played with the technology, and they came back on a Monday morning and said, hey, have you tried this? This is going to change the world. And they made a commitment as a team at that time that they were going to harness this technology to take their company to a different level. And I'll show you some examples later of exactly how they've done that and what the impact has been. Okay? So a lot of people say AI is going to take our jobs. And in America, we're seeing the lowest levels of unemployment in generations. And there's a lot of skill gaps. There's a lot of companies that do not have enough people with the right skills to carry out their mission. And so if you can get more productivity out of your employees by using these generative technologies and help you to offset some of those, those human gaps, some of those skill gaps, then you're doing okay. This is not about just deciding to fully replace people with chatbot. That's not what most people are thinking about today. Okay? But now ChatGPT, of course, gets all the headlines, but it's just the tip of the iceberg. The Wall Street Journal did us a great service about 2 weeks ago when they decided to have a competition between the world's top 5 chatbots. And what they essentially did is they took the professional or subscription version of these chatbots, so they took the best that was out there, and then they went into their newsroom and they asked their editors and their journalists, who were subject matter experts in a wide degree of domains, ask the chatbot specific questions about what your expertise is. And blindly, they evaluated the responses of these chatbots. Does anybody know who won? Anybody knew who got the prize? It wasn't ChatGPT, spoiler alert. It was my favorite app, Perplexity. Okay? So this is online, the Wall Street Journal. You can find this pretty easily. But what's interesting is when you look at Microsoft Copilot, it ranks very poorly, and that's because Microsoft was running the older version of Copilot, which is of the ChatGPT, which was 4, where ChatGPT was evaluated using the new Omni version, okay? But Google and Copilot did not do very well. Databricks is just a world-class company. They just announced a major acquisition of Tabular earlier this week to allow companies that are building their own models to be able to access data. And Databricks says they are saving 5,000 hours of work each month just by using Perplexity, okay? I am blown away by the capability of Perplexity. And what's amazing, some of you may have heard of the incredible faux pas of what was known as AI overviews by Google. This is Google responding directly to Perplexity, realizing that they need to have an AI-based search tool. And as you probably heard in the first few days of that being released, it was providing some really crazy results. So it's not easy to do this. And Perplexity is well ahead now of the world's greatest search giant when it comes to generative AI search, okay? And so, of course, for most of you in the room who are managing these deployments, right, how do you bridge the knowing-doing gap? This is one of the things I see most readily as I travel around the world. A lot of people will raise their hands, yes, I know about this, I've tried this tool. But have you really integrated it into your daily work lives? That's the key. And so, just a couple of weeks ago, I had a chance to give a keynote for a company known as Instructure. They make the Canvas Learning Management System, which is used by about half of the universities in the US, okay? And one of the people in the audience was a woman that runs design for the whole company. And she came up to me after the talk and said, hey, I'm running this collaborative event on Monday, a few days after the talk. Can you just quickly guide me through how I can bring it into this design collaboration? So I spent about an hour with her on the phone, and wouldn't you know, she went in courageously and she used some of these tools that we're talking about to begin to do brainstorming events, ideation events, for about 30 of their key stakeholders. And you may not be able to read the chart because it's pretty small. This is just a screen grab of a LinkedIn direct message. We use the AI features to do the first rounds of clustering. This saved me hours. I'm never going to go back. FigJam, of course, is the AI version of Figma. And we use ChatGPT-4 to help us organize a lot of nodes, as well as act as an ideation partner to brainstorm against how might we problems. We previously would never have attempted a brainstorm with 30+ people at the same time. It would have taken too long. But the new tools reduce down the time to a reasonable amount without causing fatigue. I have been converted. Okay? And so that's the key, right? If you see one example of the use of generative AI within your company that gives you a completely different outcome, it's going to maybe help you reframe the way you think about it. And so how do you become a Gen AI super user? You don't have to be a data scientist. You don't have to be a machine learning engineer. You don't have to learn how to code. You just have to know how to speak or type. And if you become a Gen AI power user, power users say that AI boosts their creativity, 92%, helps them focus on their most important work, 93%, and this is really important, helps them feel motivated and work more. So the best of both worlds, I'm more productive, and I like my job better. That's a tough thing to disagree with, right? I'll sign up for that anytime, okay? And then here is a more specific, this comes from the Microsoft LinkedIn 2024 Work Trends Report that's about 3 weeks old right now. And what they're doing is they're looking at 4 cohorts, those that are skeptics, those that are novices, explorers, and power users. And they're asking them what their relationship is with generative AI, how I use it. And power users, the ones in green, are saying that I research and try new prompts. This is mindset. I regularly experiment with different ways of using AI. I don't just give up and try one way. And before starting a task, I ask myself, how might AI help me with this? And then how does it impact them? It makes me more creative, more productive, helps me focus on the most important work, right? So there is a payoff for each of you individually and for your teams if you make a commitment to just lay hands on these tools and become confident in them. They're not that hard to use on an individual level. I'm not saying that when we integrate this into business workflows, there's not a lot of work to be done. But individually, there's a lot of upside here. Okay? Microsoft users are reporting out significant benefits. Reading 11% fewer emails, spending 4% less time interacting with them. Customers who saw the most impact are spending between 25 and 50% less time reading emails. Right? We're seeing in Teams the ability to summarize the entire meeting and capture notes and assign action items and create project plans with those. Documents, Copilot users edited 10% more documents, okay? And the largest saw a 20% increase. I had a student of mine at Harvard who took the course back in November. It's a Microsoft shop. And he was blown away when he learned of what Copilot could do. Went back into his office, pounded on the desk of his CTO, and demanded that he and his team get Copilot. Many months later, okay, he's got it. And he's telling me within just weeks, he's seeing a 30% increase in productivity in his team, in weeks, okay? But he had to go and get it, okay? And he needed my support to help him convince those people within power that this was something he needed to do. And he's really benefiting from it, right? Some of you probably saw this announcement about a week ago, coming out of the Build conference. This is the first real AI edge device. You have a new word in the vernacular, an NPU, a neural processing unit. Add that to CPU and GPU. The ability to do a lot of complex computations on your device so that you're not interacting with the cloud. We have the Worldwide Developer Conference of Apple coming up next week. Expect to be blown away. They have been keeping things very secret. Next week is their week to unveil and tell us what they've been working on behind closed doors. Okay? And so now, though, there are a lot of companies that are not embracing a top-down approach. And so what we're seeing is that while 80% of leaders believe their company need to adopt AI to stay competitive, 60% of them, the majority of them, do not believe their companies have a coherent plan for implementing generative AI. And I will tell you, I've seen that repeatedly, okay? That's not stopping people. People, just like people brought their devices to work, right? People wanted to bring their Apples to work when BlackBerry was just very, very much in a death loop. People are bringing AI to work, whether their bosses want them to or not. 75% of people are using AI at work. And what's amazing is that it's not just Gen Z. Even those of us who are boomers, okay, are at 73% bringing AI to work. So this is not a generational thing. This is a I want to get my job done thing. And I have a tool that's going to let me to get my job done more quickly and more effectively. Okay? And so these are industries that seem to be the ones that are pushing on where they are upskilling. So a lot of them are using LinkedIn Aptitude, right? They're using LinkedIn training. And you're starting to see professional services, real estate, entertainment providers, retail, right? Construction. These are not just technology companies. These are technologies across every industry where people are embracing AI, learning about it, and performing their jobs in a much more effective way. Okay? And so what is the art of the possible then? Some of you may have seen this very interesting study with Harvard Business School and Wharton around Boston Consulting Group. They took 750 Boston Consulting Group consultants. They divided them into a control group and a group with ChatGPT. And what they found across 18 tasks, creative, analytical, marketing, and writing tasks. And what they found is these very well-educated, very well-credentialed BCG consultants finished their tasks 12.2% more, completed them 25% more quickly, and the quality of their work rose by 40%. Okay? But most interestingly, what you saw was that the lower 50th percentile of the company saw, and these are smart people, their capability improved by a full 43%. So you're able to uplift, level up the lower performers in your team to bring them into a level of much higher performance than they get to naturally. Okay? So this is a very powerful outcome. Okay? Stanford did the same kind of study around call centers. They looked at, across many companies, about 5,200 support agents, and that what they saw is those that were using AI saw productivity increases as by issues resolved by hour for 14%. It improved customer sentiment, reduced requests for managerial intervention, and it improved employee retention. Okay? Significant across the board. And again, I'm not going to belabor these, but what this basically shows you is material improvements in all of the key metrics that you would use within a call center environment. Okay? So some success stories. Let's talk about marketing. Not surprisingly, marketing today is a very digital function. Okay? And marketing executives have become very early adopters of technology. 200 were interviewed by the Boston Consulting Group across 3 continents, Asia, Europe, and the United States. 90% are either using it or they're in the middle of piloting it right now. So there's a lot of usage within marketing. Okay? And these are the 4 key or universal functions or use cases that I referred to earlier in my opening remarks. Across every industry, according to this McKinsey heat map, from health tech to banking to pharmaceuticals, medical products, that dark blue vertical line is marketing and sales. Marketing and sales is universally applicable to every industry. There's no company in this room that wouldn't benefit from applying generative AI capabilities to sales and marketing. You're also going to see software engineering, a lot of dark blue in those different rectangles. I'm going to take you through some specific use cases. Of course, customer operations, customer service, customer support, as we've already alluded to. Okay? And then a wide range of different sub-use cases within the marketing domain, from lead identification to marketing optimization around A/B testing, things that are happening now very, very quickly with Gen AI. So let's go back to Klarna. Klarna's marketing chief says Gen AI is helping them become more brutally efficient within the marketing function. Okay? The company cut sales and marketing spend by 11% in Q1 24, while increasing the number of campaigns and updating its collateral. 37% of the reduction of that spend is being attributed to AI. Okay? They're using Gen AI tools such as Midjourney, and they're saving the company $1.5 million per quarter on image production. So they're not working with outside contractors to do image production. Okay? They have decreased by 25% spending on external marketing suppliers for tasks such as social media and production. Okay? And so IBM is running a pilot with Adobe. 1,600 of their marketing creatives were given Adobe tools. 10x improvement in productivity in the first quarter of usage. Okay? And here's a fascinating use case. This company known as Brox.ai has interviewed 1 million different consumer citizens. And they have captured those interviews on video. And now what you have is a human digital twin. And in that human digital twin, you're able to go into this data and you're able to run focus groups. And they're doing this now for 120 major brands. So here's an example. They were doing work on behalf of a digital media streaming and entertainment company. And they went into their database of 1 million digital humans, and they queried it on what are the top pain points across all of these well-known brands, whether it be Netflix or Disney or Hulu or Amazon Prime. Across, lack of new content, quality of content, price rises, too many ads, etc. So this is the new frontier. And I'm seeing more and more of this every single day. Okay, and then sales. This is an example of the new agentic world that we are moving into. This is a company that was launched in the very famous winter 2023 batch of Y Combinator out of Silicon Valley. This company is known as Artisan. And their mission is to create a lot of digital agents that will do work on your behalf. This is an avatar that they've named Ava. And Ava is the world's first AI employee. Okay? And what Ava can do is you can onboard her in 10 minutes. She then has access to 270 million email addresses. and she's able to ghostwrite and send thousands of emails at a time to prospects. And when you're able to then get prospect interest, she's able to actually schedule a meeting for you and book that meeting into the calendar for your sales teams, okay? I have only scratched the surface here of what is possible. I teach 40-hour courses on this. So imagine my challenge in trying to convey my excitement and some of the impact of the use cases in 30 minutes. But I know that I'm out of time here and I want to take some questions. So let me leave it at this, and I'm happy to answer any questions that I can answer for you, okay? So who's got, yes, please, and I think we're going to try to get a microphone to people. That makes sense? Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. This was very inspiring and a very nice summary of what is happening, all across. I have one question. So in the companies where you're seeing already like chief AI officers popping up, how is it embedded in the structure of the companies?
How is it embedded? So the companies that are adopting AI today. Okay, so obviously there's no silver bullet, okay, but almost always with all of the success stories that I have shown you, executive leadership, executive sponsorship has been a very important part of the mix. So whether it be the Klarna team, right? Klarna, a relatively small company but growing very quickly, whether it be IBM, these are all things where the leadership team sees the huge impact and is willing to make the investment and empower their employees and skill them up and make whatever investment is required. There's no question there's a lot of bottom-up benefits, but they're not going to change the company. They're going to change the productivity of an individual or change the productivity of a small team.
But it's like a standalone role next to a CTO, CIO, right? So they kind of have to collaborate very closely.
Is there ever a time when well-run, well-led businesses did not have collaboration?
Yeah.
If they don't, then if they have a Machiavellian management structure, all bets are off. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
No, it's more question, do you see like a CDO, CIO, Chief AI Officer all at the same level, more in bigger companies, most likely, right? Or how do they kind of...
Yeah, I don't think there's any one... I think every company, right, different people are making decisions to drive innovation and technology. But at the end of the day, if the CEO or the president of the company is not supporting it, it's not going to happen. Okay? Most of the time, the chief AI officer is reporting directly to the CEO.
Yep.
And what is happening in these new roles is the chief AI officer is now that person who is being given the responsibility of unifying technology under any AI initiative. And I'll give you one example. There's a company in America called Rocket, and they do mortgages, and they do a variety of different sort of financial services for home purchases. And what they did for the first time in their history is they named one overarching chief AI officer to oversee technology across all of their different portfolio companies, right? So they want to take a very holistic view. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yep, I see a hand over here.
Thank you very much. It was really eye-opening for me. I have a question regarding the data protection and GDPR rules. How you see we can implement all these AIs without compromising the data that third-party partners sharing with us, and we have liability to keeping it confidential? Because always the questions comes, there can be commercial information, that can be personal information that we cannot share by some rules that we have and liabilities.
All right, so I am by no means a GDPR expert, and I would never want to pretend that I was, right? All I can tell you is if you go back and look at two things, right? You look at this new level of AI governance. The company has to very quickly think about upskilling its board, creating a governance committee internally, and you have, just like in the world of cybersecurity, you have to train every single employee in the company, especially those that are bringing AI to work without the sanctioning of management, right? But the second thing is you obviously want to work with trusted providers, right? So as I do work with my colleagues from WNS, one of the exercises I put them through is what are some of the objections that you expect you're going to get from your client, and how would you handle those? And this is number one all the time. So this is an organization that is very thoughtful and very skilled at guiding its clients through some of these issues. Okay, but it requires a lot of rigor. There's no question about it. Care to just spread let me take another question over here. Yeah, okay. This gentleman over here with the navy blue blazer up front.
Hi.
Hi.
The question that I have is, like you mentioned that in several cases, regulations can actually stifle innovation, right? Do you think as far as generative AI is concerned, if there was some governing rules or the fact that...
Can you pull the microphone away from yourself a little bit, because it's...
Yeah, is this better?
That's better.
Yeah, so do you think that, if there was a regulatory framework, right, governing AI, that would actually lead to higher adoption in AI, compared to what we have right now?
If I understand, if there was a governance framework, would it lead to a higher adoption? I mean, so I don't think there's ever going to be a single holy grail governance framework. But I do think that you're seeing more frameworks. So right now I know that a lot of companies are kind of going with this new 9 principle framework, which is kind of like training wheels. But I think every region is going to have its framework. Every industry is going to have its framework, right? And so I wish I could say there was going to be a one-size-fits-all framework. I think that's not realistic. I think it goes back to the answer I gave the woman just before. It's going to come down to the judgment and the expertise of each company, right? I just was in a debate at MIT 2 weeks ago on how this should be managed, and my message is it takes a village. There's no one individual, there's no one framework, there's no one committee. It really does come down to a company by company investment and understanding and then action behind it. Okay?
Thank you.
All right.
Professor, I just thought, since this is also a WNS event, I thought I would just give comfort to everyone here in terms of what we are doing as a company to enable all of this. Obviously, you've heard the professor, and he's helping train a lot of our people. But one of the important things that WNS also is doing is, in addition to creating these positions of the chief business officers that I spoke about, whom you have been interacting with, we have also created the position of the chief business officer of what I call WNS Next. Right? That's a direct report into me, and into which hyperautomation, the whole technology, as well as analytics flows in. And this person is, like the professor explained, like a chief AI officer. But this person we are calling as WNS Next Leader, because this person will now bring data analytics, hyperautomation all together, and as a horizontal, enable every one of our businesses in terms of making sure that generative AI and futuristic tools are available across the entire entity. So it'll not be a P&L separately. The 4 others will be P&Ls, but we're doing it in a very disciplined fashion. And I can tell you, finding therefore the leader from outside who is an expert in Gen AI and an expert in P&L management and an expert in coordinating all of this is not easy, but we're doing it.
Excellent. All right. I think I'm out of time, so unless there's any last one question, I think, Chandan, I think it sounds like it's time for me to exit the stage. So thank you for your great questions, and thank you for your attention.